Welcome to the deep dive. We are really glad you are joining us today. I want you to start by picturing a scenario for me.
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Imagine you are at your job, right? And you have access to the absolute fastest, most powerful computers on the planet.
Hmm.
You have up to the second breaking news pouring into your screens from all across the globe. You're equipped with literally the most sophisticated analytical tools that money can buy.
The best of the best.
Exactly. And yet, despite having all of these incredible external advantages, you still fail at your job 90% of the time.
It sounds completely counterintuitive, but honestly, this is the daily reality for the vast majority of people participating in the financial markets.
It's wild. I mean, it really is a striking
It
paradox.
is. When you consider the sheer volume of information and, the technology available today, logic kind of dictates that success rates should be incredibly high.
Yeah.
But they aren't. So we are putting on our hats as trading psychologists today to examine a phenomenon that really defies pure logic. And the implications here extend far beyond just trading. They touch on how human beings interact with um, really any high-stakes, probabilistic environment.
For this deep dive, we are pulling our insights straight from Chapter 1 of The Mental Discipline of Consistent Trading.
It's a fantastic source text.
It really is. And the context the author provides is just crucial. He notes that since 1982, there has been this absolute explosion in the trading world.
Oh yeah, new exchanges, new contracts.
A total flood of advisory services and these incredibly sophisticated technical trading systems. Yet, despite this massive informational growth, an inescapable fact remains.
A tiny, sophisticated minority of traders continues to extract over 90% of the profits.
Which means the vast majority of traders are net losers, year in and year out.
So our mission today is to explore the psychological chasm separating that winning 10% from the losing 90%.
Right.
We are unpacking the author's personal journey to discover a fundamental truth. Consistent success in the markets relies very little on those external tools we just listed.
Yeah, the screens and the news feeds.
Exactly. It relies almost entirely on mastering what the author terms the internal environment.
Let's start with the reality of the market itself. Since we all know futures trading is strictly a zero-sum game, the text forces us to look at the psychological toll of that reality.
Which is heavy.
Incredibly heavy. Every dollar of profit gained by a top-tier trader is systematically extracted from the pockets of the masses of regular traders who are basically funding those winnings every single day.
Just funneling money to the top.
Yeah, and the psychological weight of knowing you are constantly in a direct zero-sum conflict with some of the sharpest minds in the world,
Right?
it creates this intense hunger for the so-called secret to success.
The irony is that when the great traders are asked for their secret, the advice they give usually falls totally flat.
Oh, completely.
They offer these platitudes like maintain self-discipline or, control your emotion.
Right.
To a struggling trader, that advice is practically useless because it completely ignores the complex cognitive mechanisms operating when you are in the middle of a live trade.
Okay, let's unpack this, specifically looking at the most ubiquitous piece of trading advice ever given. Cut your losses short.
Oh, you hear it everywhere.
It is repeated in every seminar, every financial blog. And it sounds perfectly rational on paper.
Sure it does.
But the author argues this is essentially a vague wisdom trap. It's great advice in a vacuum, but for the average person, it completely ignores the psychological reality of the environment they're actually operating in.
What's fascinating here is why that specific piece of advice is so incredibly hard to execute.
Yeah, why do we freeze?
Well, the author gives us a brilliant psychological framing by describing the market as an environment in perpetual motion.
Perpetual motion. I love that term.
It's so accurate. Unlike a casino game where a hand is definitively over, the cards are cleared, and you lose your bet, a losing trade remains alive.
Right, the market doesn't stop.
Because it never stops moving, it always offers this remote, tantalizing possibility that it might bounce back.
It dangles that microscopic glimmer of hope.
Exactly. Hope that the market will reverse, validate your original thesis, and make you whole again.
I think we can all relate to that dangling hope. If you think about a time when you've made a mistake, maybe in a business venture or a major life decision, when your hard-earned capital and your self-esteem are on the line, admitting defeat is tough.
It's brutal.
But when the environment itself is constantly shifting and offering a 1% chance you might still be proven right, Executing a cold-blooded rule like cutting a loss becomes just agonizing.
Completely agonizing.
To actually click the button and lock in a failure requires a profound cognitive shift.
It requires a shift because the brain is wired to protect the ego. A paper loss is just data. A realized loss is a documented admission of failure.
You have to own it.
You do. And the danger of trying to learn this through trial and error in the market is that the market is uniquely hostile to the normal human learning curve.
But isn't trial and error how we learn almost any complex skill? I mean, why does the market punish that specific learning mechanism so severely?
Because in most disciplines, trial and error costs you time, perhaps some mild embarrassment, but it rarely bankrupts you.
Fair point.
In a market, most people simply run out of capital before they extract the necessary psychological lesson. Or even if they have deep pockets, the emotional trauma they inflict on themselves during that learning curve leaves them deeply scarred.
They carry that baggage forward.
They develop deep-seated subconscious fears that ruin their future performance, even after they finally understand the mechanics of trading.
That psychological trauma brings us directly to the author's own backstory. He really serves as his own cautionary tale here.
He really does. It's a tough read.
So in 1981, he moves from a successful insurance career in the Detroit suburbs to the Gold Coast of Chicago.
Living the dream.
Or so he thought. He leases a Porsche, maintains an expensive apartment in Chicago, keeps his affluent Detroit home for his girlfriend, and flies back and forth every weekend.
The overhead must have been insane.
Oh, massive. He places himself under extreme self-inflicted financial pressure, trading with money he fundamentally cannot afford to lose.
He essentially engineered a psychological trap for himself. He violated the core tenets of risk management before executing a single trade.
Completely.
The text highlights his time working at Merrill Lynch Commodities, where he expected to be surrounded by consistently profitable market wizards.
He thought he was entering the inner sanctum.
Right. But instead, he encountered a massive disparity between the external perception of professionals and their internal reality.
He found himself at the second largest commodity office for Merrill Lynch alongside 38 account executives. And out of those 38 supposed experts, only one actually traded his own money.
That is just staggering.
The rest were simply advising. Furthermore, none of these executives had any customers who were consistently making money. The text notes the typical customer lost their entire stake in an average of just 4 months.
That statistic just shatters the myth of the external edge.
It totally does.
These account executives had the terminals, the news feeds, the proximity to the exchange. But advising a client requires zero personal risk.
They aren't in the arena.
The moment their own money was on the line, their internal environment collapsed under the weight of the exact same psychological deficits as the retail traders.
And he noticed the exact same phenomenon down on the trading floor, too.
Right, the floor traders.
The floor traders might make a few $1,000s in the early morning session, but they routinely gave it all back by the afternoon.
We can really attribute that to a breakdown in discipline masquerading as market activity.
How do you mean?
Well, in the morning, floor traders operate on specific plans and fresh mental capital. By the afternoon, fatigue sets in, boredom takes over, and they begin trading for the psychological stimulation of the action rather than actually following their rules.
Chasing the thrill.
Exactly. The perpetual motion of the market allows them to avoid confronting these deep-seated psychological flaws, because the very next trade always holds the promise of a windfall.
And that constant promise of a windfall leads to a specific mental pitfall the author suffered from himself, which he terms the big trade mentality.
Yes.
Because his lifestyle overhead was so massive with the Porsche and the 2 houses, his internal decision-making became completely warped. He admits he would routinely refuse to take guaranteed profits of $500 or $750 on a trade.
The specific phrasing he uses in the text is critical here. He states he felt the market was insulting him by offering such paltry sums compared to his massive financial obligations.
Insulting him.
Think about the cognitive distortion required to arrive at that conclusion.
It's pure ego.
He is anthropomorphizing a global financial network. He is projecting intent and malice onto a completely neutral environment.
The market doesn't care about your car lease.
The market has absolutely no awareness of his Porsche or his dual mortgages. But his external financial pressure completely overrode his ability to perceive the objective reality of the market structure.
And so the pressure cooker eventually exploded. In March 1982, 8 months after moving to Chicago, he lost everything.
The inevitable crash.
His flawless credit, the house, the car. He filed for bankruptcy and was left with nothing but his job, a rented room, a TV, and a bed.
Rock bottom.
This leads to the concept of forced awareness, but I want to dig deeper into what the author was experiencing right before that crash. How does a seemingly intelligent professional blind themselves to an impending bankruptcy?
It comes down to how human cognition handles extreme dissonance.
Okay.
As a trade moves further and further against a trader, the cognitive dissonance between their belief that they are right and the market's reality that they are losing becomes totally excruciating.
So how do they cope?
To relieve that pain, the brain actively builds mental defenses. The trader will literally stop looking at the time frames that show the loss.
Wow.
They will switch from a 5-minute chart to a weekly chart just to find a historical trend line that supports their hope. They aggressively filter out the negative reality.
They construct an alternate reality just to protect the ego. But eventually the margin clerks call. The capital hits zero.
Precisely, and that is the forced awareness.
You can't hide anymore.
When the account is drained, the external reality violently shatters the internal illusion. The mental defenses have nothing left to protect. The trader is forced to look at their failure without any cognitive buffers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, the psychological aftermath.
Yeah, this part is fascinating.
You would expect a person in this situation to be absolutely consumed by dread. But the author states that once he lost the flawless credit and the possession, the very symbols he thought constituted his identity, the stress completely dissipated.
It is a profound psychological uncoupling.
Uncoupling.
He realized his core identity was not tethered to his financial status or his possessions. He survived his absolute worst-case scenario. He discovered that being wrong in the market and losing his material wealth did not diminish his core value as a human being.
And this realization leads us to the core theme of this entire deep dive, the fundamental difference between the internal environment and the external market.
This is the crux of it all.
The author finally understood that the market is just perpetual price movement. It is just a stream of data ticks. The market has zero control over the trader.
The market cannot insult you, validate you, or target you.
It's totally neutral.
It is merely a perfect, neutral mirror reflecting the trader's internal attitude. All the power and all the choices reside entirely within the mind of the individual.
So his fear?
His previous fear was not caused by the market threatening him at all. It was entirely a result of his own lack of trust in himself to actually execute his rules.
This brings us to a crucial concept the author introduces, creating losses simply by trying to avoid them. Let's look at the mechanics of this. How does a trader's fear literally manufacture the outcome they are trying so hard to prevent?
We have to look at the limitations of human mental capacity. We cannot be consciously aware of every single piece of information in our environment at once.
You'd be overwhelmed.
Right. Our brains operate as massive filtering systems, focusing our attention only on the information we deem most critical. If a trader's internal environment is consumed by the fear of losing money, their brain will systematically allocate all its bandwidth to finding information that validates that fear.
So if you are terrified of a loss, your brain acts like a heat-seeking missile for data that screams, you are going to lose.
Exactly.
By hyper-focusing on the threat, you essentially put on cognitive blinders. You completely filter out the objective market information that might be pointing to a brand new opportunity or even a clear signal to exit the trade early.
That's the tragic irony of the fear-driven trader. In their desperate attempt to avoid a loss, they divert their attention away from the objective flow of the market.
They lose touch with reality.
They freeze, or they exit prematurely, or they hold on to a loser way too long, all because their mental bandwidth has been hijacked by their own internal defense mechanisms. They actively create the loss by disconnecting from the present moment.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, how do you actually apply this? If external tools are secondary, and if fear literally blinds you to opportunity, how do you go about retraining your mind to operate in a high-stakes environment?
It takes work.
The author lays out a step-by-step psychological progression, starting with step 1, granting yourself permission to be wrong.
Step 1 requires a complete overhaul of how we view failure. You must develop the mental skill to accept a loss without any negative emotional residue.
Which means no beating yourself up.
Zero guilt, zero shame, and zero self-punishment. Until a financial loss is viewed merely as a neutral piece of feedback a business expense, essentially rather than a personal indictment of your intelligence, you will always operate from a place of fear.
But getting to that point of absolute neutrality requires structure, which is step 2, the power of rules.
You need boundaries.
Because the market has no boundaries and is in perpetual motion, you have to construct the boundaries yourself. This means establishing clearly defined trading and money management rules that absolutely must be followed.
We need to analyze why establishing rules is entirely different from actually following them. Why do traders routinely break their own rules in the heat of the moment?
Well, often it's the fear of leaving money on the table, or the refusal to admit the initial analysis was flawed.
Right.
Following a stop-loss rule means definitively declaring, I was wrong about this. The ego would rather risk a catastrophic, account-ending loss than take a small, guaranteed loss that proves their imperfection.
Exactly. And that is why the rules are not just mathematical tools. They are psychological safety nets.
Safety nets.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, following your rules leads to step 3, the cycle of self-trust.
How does that cycle work?
When you dictate a rule like cutting a loss at a specific level and the market hits that level, and you execute the rule without a second of hesitation, you build internal trust.
So the more you follow your own rules, the deeper that self-trust becomes. The author provides a brilliant psychological equation here. As self-trust increases, fear proportionately dissipates. You realize you are never actually afraid of the unpredictable nature of the market.
You were only ever afraid of your own inability to act in your best interest.
That's a huge shift.
When, with absolute certainty that you will protect yourself regardless of what the market does, the fear just vanishes. You no longer need the market to behave in a specific way to feel safe.
And the practical result of that psychological transformation is immense. The author describes it as having the blinders removed from his eyes.
The cognitive blinders we talked about.
Once the fear of losing was eradicated, his mental bandwidth was entirely freed up. He could perceive subtle relationships in the market's behavior that his fear had previously just filtered right out.
He achieved what psychologists refer to as a flow state. Because his ego was no longer tied to being right on any individual trade, he could easily move in and out of positions.
He was adaptable.
He could take a loss without hesitation and instantly be mentally available to capitalize on the very next opportunity the market presented.
The evidence of this internal shift is striking. By June of 1982, just a few months after his devastating bankruptcy and the resulting forced awareness, he was consistently extracting money from the market.
What a turnaround.
The external market hadn't become easier. His computer terminal hadn't changed. He had entirely rebuilt his internal environment.
It is a powerful testament to the fact that technical knowledge is virtually useless without the psychological infrastructure to support it.
To summarize this deep dive for you, achieving true consistency, whether you are trading futures or navigating any complex probabilistic environment, does not stem from acquiring better external tools.
It's not about the screens.
It doesn't come from finding a magical algorithm or waiting for the perfect market conditions. It is derived entirely from doing the difficult internal work.
The hardest work there is.
It is the process of uncoupling your self-worth from the outcome of a single event, building unbreakable self-trust through rigid adherence to your own rules, and clearing the cognitive blinders created by fear.
This raises an important question, one that pushes the boundaries of everything we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
If the market is simply a neutral mirror reflecting human emotion, and the ultimate key to success requires systematically eliminating human fear and ego, are we moving toward a future where the psychological journey the author describes becomes entirely obsolete?
Oh, because of AI?
Exactly. As we enter an era dominated by algorithmic AI trading entities that possess literally zero ego, zero fear of loss, and zero cognitive dissonance, we have to ask, in the pursuit of the perfect internal environment, is the ultimate solution to remove the human mind from the equation entirely?
That is a profound paradigm shift to consider. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.